What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to TOJ Talks. I'm your host, Will Parkinson, at WillPod11 on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. TOJ Pod all 32. Friday afternoon here, Friday morning, really. We are fast approaching free agency tampering period in about 4 days' time from now. No better person to have on than the sex addict himself, Trevor Sikkema, host of Stock Exchange, lead draft analyst for PFF. Everyone here knows the deal. Trev, how we doing? I haven't seen you in like a week. It feels like a long time.
I know. It's good to be on with you. And you said the tampering period opens up in March. It's always the tampering period, to be honest with you. I mean, the tampering period is wide open, 365, baby. So we just get to actually report on it starting on Monday. But no, it's a very exciting time of year as we obviously like free agency is a big deal because now we get to finalize some team needs. You get to have some signings, both big and small. So it's good stuff, man. Appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course. And it's always a great time seeing teams magically agree to complex contract situations in less than 4 seconds. Surely Justin Fields hasn't talked with any team around the league and will be signed within 4 minutes. Trev, obviously, we're coming off kind of the All-Star circuit, and finishing with the Underwear Olympics in Indy. We have pro days coming up and things could, fluctuate and things of that nature. I don't usually pro days unless you're, a Zach Wilson guy. Like, I don't know how much they're going to move people that much. Maybe it's a couple picks here or there if you really have this amazing time, right? Of some of the guys that didn't work out. But that said, what was your impression? Is there anything that like stuck out this circuit versus years past? I felt like the guys last minute pulling out of testing in Indy was my biggest takeaway of like, ooh, this guy's not running. Well, I guess I'm not going to run now too. Did you feel that a little bit this past week?
Yeah, and I feel as though, unfortunately, we've been moving towards this trend with the combine because I do think that it sort of started with guys, not wanting to play in their final bowl game if the bowl game wasn't, for a championship or a New Year's Six bowl or something like that. And then you get, towards the draft season and it's like, all right, well, this isn't necessarily new, but you'll have guys that'll sit out of the Shrine Bowl or sit out of the Senior Bowl or maybe have a couple of good practices at one of those events and then pull out for the game. I think, man, we saw a lot of players in the Shrine Bowl do that. We saw a handful of players in the Senior Bowl, and it feels like it just happens every year. And then last year, not participating in the combine isn't necessarily new. I think that we see that with the very top guys, but like Marvin Harrison Jr. last year, like did nothing. Like absolutely nothing. He basically just interviewed with teams the entire draft season long. And we didn't quite see that stance this year, but I wonder how much more popular that gets. I suppose we did that for the quarterback position. I think it's more rare that we see it for other positions, and we didn't quite see a Marvin Harrison Jr. level type of a player. I guess maybe Tetairoa McMillan on the wide receiver side is sort of the same way because he didn't do anything in Indianapolis. He said that he wasn't going to run at his pro day. I don't know if he's going to work out at all, but it just does feel like it's becoming a little bit more common where these guys just say, hey, I'm standing on my tape. Like, it is what it is. And I get it. I really do. Like, for example, I know that we'll talk about this player for the Jets because I do think that he's a legit target for them at 7. But McMillan from Arizona, the wide receiver from Arizona, he's sitting here and I think he knows he's not the fastest wide receiver in the world. Now, do I think he's slow? No, I don't think he's slow by any means, but he's not going to wow anybody by running a 40 or something like that. And I think him and his people know that. So instead, if we're sitting here thinking that his tape's good enough to be wide receiver 1, it's the LeBron James slam dunk contest theory, right? When LeBron was in his prime, everybody wanted him to do the slam dunk contest. But everybody in the world already unanimously agreed that LeBron was the best dunker in the world. So why would he give you evidence to think that he's not? Basically, by him participating in the event, the only place that he could go is down. And anytime that's the case with any prospects, you're kind of going to get to that. But look, even in recent memory, Drake London didn't do anything for the exact same reasons that Tetairoa McMillan did. And he turned out all right. And he's pretty good and still went number 8 overall. So same range that we're talking about here. But it's just an interesting trend to watch how much these guys participate or don't participate in bowl games, all-star events, combine, things like that.
Yeah, I think Reiner still made a point of I hope it doesn't get to this point, but a little NBA combine-ish where you send your guy out there if you're an agent and he doesn't run well and some guy from a small school runs a 4.2 and it's like, well, what the fuck's wrong with your guy?
Right.
And start asking those questions. I don't think we'll get to that point. Football's a different sport. The culture's different. But I was a little disappointed. There were some guys that I felt like I don't know. I love Mason Taylor, and he had a great gauntlet drill, but like he just worked out in the Senior Bowl and had a great week. And I felt like, dude, you could solidify yourself as like a top 45 pick if you run here. And I
Yeah.
get it. You go to the pro day, you'll get a juice time and the whole thing. I get the point. It's just I'm not dinging Mason Taylor for it. I just was like, I really wanted to see him run because I think he would have ran quite well.
Honestly, it's one of those things where every time I have this conversation with somebody, I always have to say, like, I don't blame guys for not working out. You've got normally
Yeah,
three,
I'm being
four,
selfish here.
sometimes. Right. No, 100%. You've got like 3, 4, 5 years of tape that if you're considered a first, even a second, third round pick, like you're probably pretty proud of that. It's purely selfish. It's pure like I just want to see you run because I love the combine. I love the Senior Bowl. I love the Shrine Bowl. Like I just want to see you do stuff because you're a very talented prospect. So it's a funny conversation because we have all of these, and at the end of the day, I think that everybody would agree. It doesn't really matter. If you want to say that the tape is king, the tape is king. So when you go to Indianapolis, the interviews and the measurables are basically the only extra things that you're doing there that will matter to your scouting report. The athletic stuff doesn't matter. I just want to see it. I want to
Yeah,
watch you run very fast or jump very high or go through the drills or whatever it is.
yeah. Like I wasn't. I don't blame Cam Ward. He didn't work out at the Senior Bowl. Do I? Would I also have loved to see him just go throw for 2 days and say, "Hey, I'm not going to play in the game and whatever, but I'm going to light it up and show you my arm strength's crazy." And like whatever, he got Restrepo there and he had his whole boy. It's just like an Arroyo. Like it would have been nice to see, but again, Cam Ward's going to be a top 2 pick. It doesn't matter. I
Right.
want to move to the guys that the Jets have at 7. I did a list of the guys I would say, gun to my head, feeling right now before
Hmm.
free agency. These are the 5 names I think are the most likely for the Jets at 7, based on how the board would fall, need, etc. Mason Graham, who I feel like probably won't be there, but would be one. Armand Membu, who's caught a lot of steam thanks to your co-host Connor Rogers. And now every Jets fan wants Armand Membu. Don't blame him. Connor's extremely smart and good at what he does. Um, I have Shamar Stewart and Jalen Walker in there as potential edge guys that could fit maybe that kind of combo player. Shamar does fit the Aaron Glenn, bigger edge, hyper athletic. And then Tyler Warren, I feel like is probably the most commonly mocked player. I guess 2-part question. One, like, what are your thoughts on those main 3? Graham, Warren, and Membu would feel like the most likely.
Hmm.
And what would your reaction be, I guess, if it was the latter 2 of a Walker or Stewart who aren't as high on your board, but potentially could, like, everyone varies their opinions on those 2 specifically, I think.
Yeah, it's hard for me to be too harsh on even those last 2 guys, even though I'm a little bit lower on them, because I do have a lot of faith in Aaron Glenn. And I'm not just saying that because I'm coming on a Jets podcast. Like, I think that he's got a really good mentality about him, how he's going to approach team building. Very clearly, like the way that they went through the Aaron Rodgers situation. I think that it probably would have made sense to bring Rodgers back, but they looked at this as much more of a long term and a culture view thing. And they ended up coming to the conclusion, no, we don't want this around. And look, they also need wide receivers on this team. They could have very well said, like, no, okay, like we're going to keep Devontae Adams, but it was sort of the same thing. What I love about it is they've been very consistent the whole time. So getting back around to sort of that draft strategy, if they end up taking Jalen Walker, if they end up taking Shamar Stewart, to me, I'm okay with that for the Jets because I actually believe that they'll have a plan. There's some teams in the NFL that
Those guys, you need a plan to draft them. You can't just start now.
100%. And the reason why I'm a little bit lower on them, a little bit more hesitant is not because I don't like the players. I think Shamar's a good kid. I think he's extremely talented. I absolutely believe that he's going to get more than a sack and a half in the season at the NFL level. Like the production is going to be better for him just naturally. So you will get that out of him. How much? He's going to be a double-digit sack guy. I think that's sort of up for debate. But at least you get to think that he's going to be a little bit better. And then Jalen Walker, I'm lower on Jalen Walker just because I don't really know where you play him. If you play him at edge full time, which a lot of people would say is the best part of his film, and I would agree, he is not built like an edge at all whatsoever. So he's got to be super twitched up. He's got to be super explosive. The speed to power conversion's got to be rare for the NFL level in order for him to be a major difference maker at edge. But it doesn't sound like he's going to get picked at edge. He wants to kind of play that linebacker off-ball, on-ball hybrid that he did a little bit at Georgia, and he's got a lot of confidence in doing so. So to me, when people think about Jalen Walker, they go, is this Isaiah Simmons? Or some people talk about that with like Nicky Manwari as well. You can sort of rope him into this conversation. I know the Jets aren't taking him, but is this positionless player who just doesn't work out because you didn't have a plan? I at least have faith that the Jets are going to have a plan for one of those 2 guys. But getting into those top 3, think Membu's an excellent selection. I think that Connor nailed it in his thought process. Having him to pair with Olu Fashanu, and you just have these young offensive tackles that you could build your offensive line around. I mean, that almost damn near completes the offensive line then for them, like what they have
Yeah.
there. If they are able to bring in Membu and he's able to play great right away. So that, in theory, makes a ton of sense because, whether you're picking a Jackson Dart, Will Howard, a Jalen Milrow or something on day 2, or if you're foregoing this quarterback class altogether and you're probably going in all in next year, you want to have the offensive line set up in front of you correctly. And so I don't hate that strategy at all whatsoever. Connor's doing a very good job of being so great at his job that the Jets are eventually going to pay him to
Hopefully.
shut the hell up so that he doesn't give away their draft strategies, which is great. Hopefully he could just still do the pod. I think that Mason Graham, you're right. A lot of mock drafts that we do, he doesn't make it to 7. I think it is still
Plausible.
less than. I think it's still less than 50% that he would make it to 7. But I think certainly after the combine, with him weighing in at 296, him not testing, and then him having shorter arms than we even thought that he was going to have, that just at least opens up the door to go, okay, the NFL doesn't really like taking outliers when it comes to size and length, even if you got really good tape. So I don't think this changes anything that we've seen from Mason Graham, but it does open up the possibility for him to slide a little bit down the order, especially with guys like Membu who are getting kicked up a little bit. Maybe Warren's getting kicked up a little bit. Maybe Shamar Stewart's getting kicked up a little bit. Players like that. And then the last guy, who was the final guy? Warren.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the one that we've been mocking to the Jets for forever. To me, it's just a culture fit more than anything. He can absolutely help you in the receiving game. He's a bonus in the blocking game. And just the mentality that he has. He's the guy that you want in the locker room. He's a cornerstone piece that you can build the offense around. That scouting report and that connection is very easy, and that's why we've seen it so much in mock drafts.
Yeah, it was interesting. Warren at his podium, I know you were there for that as well. He comped himself to Jeremy Shockey, and I went back and obviously I remember watching Jeremy Shockey. I went back and watched early Shockey because I was I don't know, dude, I was 8 years old. I wasn't watching tape. I was watching games on Sundays like everybody else. And I was like, it does make sense. Not an elite athlete, but a really good athlete, a better football player athlete than he was testing guy.
I agree 100%.
A little bit of a lunatic and could use him in the red zone. You could split him out wide, throw him a fade and different things. But he upped the Giants kind of okay, here's an outlet option and and he could block well and came from a program that was winning, can never win a big game. Shockey did, obviously Tyler Warren, fortunately coached by James Franklin. But the one thing you mentioned about Mason Graham there, and we talked a little bit about the testing piece, I think my frustration, and people didn't like this comment from me, but I'm going to say it again. It's hard. We had this with Brock Bowers last year where it didn't test, came in, not quite as big as we knew. If you watch Bowers, it doesn't matter. It just was he wasn't Gronk, right? And takes the stupid picture next to Gronk during the Super Bowl, then doesn't test, has he's balding. You're what's going on here? And again, it's dumb things, but if people that kind of parachute in during draft season are dude, what? This is the generational guy. And you hear Mason Graham and you think, you see a picture of him with Stacey Dales and you're like, wow, that dude doesn't really look in great shape. And it's not that he's always looked the same. It's nothing to do with that.
Right.
It's just the optics of didn't test, didn't bench great, which is the one thing he did, which is weird to bench, but drop 25 pounds. Usually you would bench at a heavier weight and
right.
take the reps, whatever.
Yeah.
Am I crazy to overthink that just a little bit of with the Graham thing where you mentioned it, I know you guys mentioned on the pod, I thought for sure he'd go 4 or 5. And I still think that's where he'll end up.
Mm-hmm.
But now it feels like 7 or 8's back on the table a little bit. Is that just optics, weight? Does he need to test when he goes to Michigan's pro day to kind of silence a little bit of the critics, I guess?
No, I think that it would be good for him. Again, we have all these conversations, and at the end of the day, the big overarching thing, yeah, I mean, the tape is the tape, right? I mean, but he had elite grades, especially in run defense over the last couple of years. He's getting better as a pass rusher. He's got some pretty good twitch to him. To me, he's an ideal 3 technique dude. Okay, he's a little bit more sawed off. He doesn't have that length to him, but it's all right. You're not going to put him at the nose tackle position a lot. And I guess that, him playing next to Quinnen Williams, Quinnen plays the 3 tech as well. So it would take a little bit of imagination to get the most out of both of those guys, but 2 extremely talented defensive linemen. So I got a feeling that they're going to figure out how to be able to do it. It doesn't always have to be this cookie cutter. Hey, now we need a nose, we'll get it in that conversation in a few minutes, but you don't have to think well, no, we need a nose next to Quinnen Williams and be that a reason why. Let that be a reason why Mason Graham's off the board. I do think that we're overthinking it a little bit, but when it comes to, I would say, the top 10 overall picks, that stuff does mean a good amount. Like NFL teams do like having no doubts because the NFL draft is a giant guessing game anyways. And it's just those little things that might creep into your mind of a little bit of doubt. Like, all right, well, Mason Graham, he's not really like a body beautiful type of a dude. Like, it's not like he's,
Body
like two.
positive.
Yeah, it's not like he's like 5% body fat and just like absolutely shredded, yet still carrying 300 pounds. I mean, the arms are shorter, things like that. So I think that there are some of that does go into account for good, for better, or for worse. Like, I think that some people would listen to that and be like, that's absolutely ridiculous. And other people might look at it and say, no, no, no. Scouts could tell you maybe 15 years ago when they missed on a guy because his tape was really good, but then you stood next to him, he didn't look like an NFL player, and that ended up being true. So I think there's a lot of stories, a lot of instances where you could have a little bit of doubt like that. But when it comes to this process, the margins are so slim from you being pick 4 or 5, or you being 6, 7, 8, whatever. So I do think that 7 for the Jets is back on the table for Mason Graham. I do.
Yeah. I want to quickly ask you. I want to ask you about some of the quarterbacks in day 2. Probably that'll be day 2. We didn't know. No, we're never sure. The Cam Ward rumors of, I guess, is there any world or any price in which, how aggressive, I guess, would you be if you're the Jets? Like, look, I think, not reported, I've talked about it for a while. Justin Fields is their main target in free agency. I think he'll be, if he's not a Steeler, he'll probably be a Jet. And it'd be Fields and Tyrod, and we'll talk about the guys they would probably draft to have, be behind them, and then they'll go all in next year. Hopefully you have the coach, quarterback, or coach, roster, everything, and you can go trade up for Nico or Nussmeier, whatever one of these guys that comes out. Is there any world in which, though, you would try to be aggressive for one? It feels like the Giants are the most likely spot because the Titans could still end up with Abdul Carter,
right,
and a couple extra threes and whatever it may be. Like, how aggressive would you be if you're the Jets? If you miss out on Fields, do you go, fuck it? Like, let's go get Cam. Hopefully Glenn's the guy and we can do a Washington situation. Like, is there any validity to that? Or you're like, I don't know if it's worth it.
So I like Cam, but I wouldn't. It's not the same quarterback class that it was last year. You're not trading up for Jaden Daniels or Drake May or Caleb Williams. And you're just, I don't think, at least the outlook is not the same going into their NFL careers. Now, could Cam end up being a phenomenal quarterback at the NFL level? Yeah, of course. I think that's on the table for him. But I don't know if anybody in this league has that sort of conviction about him right now pre-draft. Now, if the Jets do, like if the Jets look at Cam Ward and go, oh my God, they're doubting him for the same reason that Patrick Mahomes was doubted, and we think that he's the next Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, obviously you pay whatever price you can to go up to number 1. I just wouldn't do it because I don't believe that about Ward. I think that he could be a good starting quarterback in this league. I think his ceiling is in that tier 2, because if you want to think of that tier 1 of quarterbacks is Lamar Jackson, it's Joe Burrow, it's Josh Allen, it's Patrick Mahomes. You want to throw Justin Herbert in there, you can. He's sort of that fringe guy who's in the second tier right there. I think Cam Ward, at times in his career, could be that tier 2 type of a quarterback. I don't know if he'd ever be a tier 1 type of a quarterback. And if I can't definitively say that is absolutely on the table for him, I wouldn't be trading, and I wouldn't be giving up everything that I need to give up to get from 7 to 1, especially because, like you said, I think the Raiders are going to entertain trading up, and they're one spot in front of you, so that's a disadvantage there. But I think the Giants basically hold a lot of the cards as the team that the Titans could trade back from, still get one of Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter, sort of have their cake and eat it too. And in order to be able to outbid that, you're not just then at that point bidding against the draft compensation that the Giants would offer you. You are also bidding against the gap that would be Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter versus whatever player that they would get at 7. So all of that starts to add up way too much in my mind, especially on a team that just got a new head coach, has a new outlook, a new culture of their organization, and they're going to want as many draft picks as they can get to turn the roster over. So that's sort of my thought process with the Jets and Cam Ward. I would not say that it would be a bad move, but on the surface level, with me knowing what I know here on this side of things, not really being deep in the trenches of sort of their thought process and how they want to go about things, I would not be making that move to go from 7 to 1.
Yeah. I want to kind of transition to that tier 2 or tier 3, whatever. Everyone looks at it a little bit differently. I personally feel like I wouldn't take a quarterback if I'm the Jets before 90, I think 92.
Hmm.
Um, because they just have a bunch of other needs, and like I don't want to miss out on a Tyreek Williams, a Alfred Collins at 40, at pick 42, whatever it is, or a Jack Bash or someone like that that could come in. Mason Taylor, maybe if you take him that high, if you feel confident in him, I feel like, and you don't go Warren and whatever. I feel like there's such a good level of prospect around in those pick 20 to 50 range. You could get such a varying, array of talent that reaching on a Milrow or Shook or Dart. I mean, maybe Dart's the one you at least consider, because at that point, though, I'd probably honestly trade up and take him at like try to take him in the 30s or like the early,
Hmm.
just because then you get the fifth year option. It's worth probably the capital you give up. The day at third round, I don't know if they'll be there. They won't. It feels like I like Tyler Shook a lot, and like I would happily take him in the third round, because at some point, I don't really care that the age thing. Like, you're not drafting him to be your franchise guy for 15 years. And even if you were, guys play in their 40s now. So who knows?
Right. Right.
Hopefully in day three, hopefully you're getting a guy who could be like could he start games for you potentially?
Hmm.
Where have you settled on that quarterback 3 through 7? Like, where would you be comfortable taking them? A, and then B, who could be a good fit for them? Is it Milrow because of like maybe a similar play style to Tyrod, and maybe a Fields like that does make sense?
Hmm.
Where do you land on like this? I don't know, this debate you could ask people, and some guys think Tyler Shook's a first round guy. Some people will take Milrow in round one. Some people wouldn't draft these guys. Where do you land on all of it?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think that I wonder how different every NFL team is going to be, because to be honest with you, I could wake up tomorrow and tell you a different answer of who I have as QB3. I think I'm going to end up with Milrow as QB3. He was my QB1 at one point, just because the overall potential that he has. You're never going to doubt who he is as an athlete. You're never going to doubt that the physical gifts that he has, from arm talent when it comes to distance, velocity, ball speed. You're not going to doubt the rushing ability as well, which gives him that true dual threat edge to him. And I think the